When the Space Marines have gone to war throughout the millennia, they have been led by some of humanity's finest warriors and generals. But even the Primarchs, demigods as they arguably were, still had flaws in their strategies or combat prowess. As such, it became customary for the highest ranked Space Marine commanders to not take to the field or strategium alone. Instead they were, and still are, accompanied by perhaps the finest warriors of their chapter or legion, an oft-heeded council, as well as fearsome protectors and superlative warriors. Today we will explore the different variants across Astarte's history, but they are known collectively, today as in the Great Crusade, as Space Marine Honor Guard. This is Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. Pretty much as far back as records go, Space Marine forces have maintained an honor guard of sorts, even if they don't always use them. Especially in the modern era of chapters for the Loyalist Astartes, these forces have never really been that large, but many have built reputations all of their own, independent of the commanders around them. This is doubly true for those honor guards that date back to the Legiones Astartes or have otherwise been formed from the Traitor Legions, over 11,000 years of history, whether glorious, twisted or disastrous, has marked these groups as true legends second only to the Primarchs in many cases. The origins of Honor Guard, as implied, go back to the Great Crusade and the Primarchs, where it was traditional for an Honor Guard of some sort to accompany the Primarch as counsel and guardians. It would be difficult indeed to say who the very first Honor Guard were among the Astartes, but I would place a bet on the guardians of the Space Wolves Primarch Leman Russ, who elevated his Fenrisian Honor Guard to the ranks of the Space Wolves when he was found by the Imperium. As the second Primarch ever discovered, it makes a modicum of sense that Russ implemented it first, since Horus didn't appear to do so, and there are no records of it amongst the pre-Primarch Legion Masters. Then again, it could have just been copying the Custodian Guard. We don't know. Whoever it was, the tradition of honor guards spread through every legion, though some Primarchs, particularly Angron, either rarely used them or outright despised them. Elevation to the Primarch's Guard was a sign of martial prowess and, in many ways, an embodiment of the principles or traits of the Legion and earning the trust of the Primarch in turn. Sometimes these honor guards would be standalone groups, whilst other times they would also form the elite first company of the Legion, in part or in full. As such, it was common for the first captains to lead the honor guard, though even in legions where this was the case, such as the Salamanders, the honor guard could stand above the captains in the legion hierarchy, first captain aside of course. Following the Horus heresy and the death or disappearance of many Primarchs, honor guards amongst the Loyalists pivoted slightly into a new place without losing their prestigious positions. For one thing, the formations that protected the Primarchs were almost universally disbanded or at least rebranded, with the Space Wolves and Blood Angels proving more of an exception and maintaining their old titles. With no Primarchs around, the Honor Guard now protected the Chapter Masters in battle, and it was tradition for them to carry the Chapter's banner into battle as well, just as some Legion Honor Guards had. In terms of their battlefield role, they were effectively equivalent to the command squads that often accompany company captains, guardians, champions and standard bearers drawn from the elite of the available pool, in this case the entire chapter. However, earning a place in the Honor Guard never just happens if you manage to survive long enough for a position to become available. Instead, to become a member of a chapter's honor guard requires battlefield skill and a multitude of theatres, a litany of one honours if not a full set, and a deep, perhaps all-encompassing knowledge of warfare and the chapter's abilities. Though their official place in the hierarchy is below the captains, so as to prevent an undermining of authority or a confusing clash of ideas and rules, the Honor Guard usually possess more knowledge and combat experience than the chapter's commanders. They could arguably best them tactically. As a result, the Honor Guard restrict their opinions to offering advice, but only when requested to or consulted with by the captains or others. With this in mind, however, even the most headstrong and stubborn commanders are very aware of the knowledge that the Honour Guard will often possess, and so even the chapter master will get their advice on occasion. If consulted at, for example, a meeting of chapter leadership, the Honour Guard's opinion and suggestion will carry great weight as a result. In terms of equipment, Honour Guards have shifted most notably in terms of armour. Most but not all of the Crusade-era guards use Terminator armour the majority of the time, though this would vary depending on the Primarch and the Legion's needs. However, most modern Loyalist Honour Guard now use Artificer armour, presumably freeing up the limited Terminator suits that remain for the veterans of the First Company and the commanders that prefer to use it. This armour, along with their weapons, will have been handed down through thousands of years in the case of the former legions or older chapters. Primaris Honour Guard, however, do not have Artificer armour because no such thing exists, and so I suspect that a blend of Mark X power armour has been used from Gravis to the newer Crusade variant. For the traitor legions, the Terminator armoured Guardian tradition has mostly remained intact, with those who fill the role often ferociously loyal to the highest ranked member of the organisation above all else. This allows them to be deployed as agents when necessary and prevents any attempts at betrayal from gathering much momentum, and what Honour Guards remain are rightly feared by both the enemies and subordinates of the traitor Primarchs or individuals like War Master Abaddon. As there are 18 legions to cover, we'll begin by looking over the Honour Guards of the Primarchs, though I can't promise every detail here because again there's 18 of them. Just for fun, we'll go by reverse legion number for once and start with the Alpha Legion's Lernaean Terminators. Also known as the Jaws of the Hydra, a nod to their own name and the Legion's iconography, the Lernaean are as mysterious as much of the Alpha Legion, often covering up their own existence. Nonetheless, they served as the guardians of Alfarius and or Omegon when required, and it is believed that Alfarius would commonly switch places with the Lernaeans as the need required or if he just felt like it. Such a feat was accomplished through the relative size of the 20th Primarchs and a potent blood-infused potion given to the impersonator. The Raven Guard and Corvus Corax were not known to have maintained a Terminator Honour Guard, perhaps unsurprisingly given how they operate, but a group of sorts did exist nonetheless in the form of the Shadow Wardens. This group was originally, if somewhat reluctantly, founded by Corax before his rediscovery by the Imperium. They evidently proved their worth on Lycaeus, now rechristened Deliverance, as the Warden's members were elevated to the ranks of the Astartes when the Imperium did arrive and Corax was given the Raven Guard. Renowned for stealth, as you may expect from the 19th, the Wardens took a battering in the Dropsite Massacre of Istvan V, but their leader and others would survive. They would be reorganised by Corax and renamed the Blakc Guard, which in turn would go on to become a chapter in the second founding. Moving to the 18th Legion of the Salamanders, the Honour Guard of Vulcan was in many ways the opposite to Corax's. The Pyre Guard, as they were known, was formed of Terminators with more metaphorical fire, whatever that means, than any of the others in the 18th. They were, perhaps most interestingly, all Terran as opposed to being from Nocturne, even including First Captain and Equerry Artellus Numion. As mentioned earlier, the Pyre Guard sat above the captains of the Salamanders and were all equivalent to chapter masters within the Legion, able to fight as a group alongside Vulcan or as individual commanders. Less known, however, if they even existed at all, are the Honour Guards of the Word Bearers. Whilst Erebus had a personal guard at Calth known as the Harbingers of Despair, I cannot point to a single formation or group that could be considered as Lorgar Aurelian's Honour Guard. Even during the Heresy, the possessed Galvorbak and Vathrajal were not Honour Guards in any way, and so I must conclude that the Wordbearers either did not have Honour Guard, or that their existence has simply been lost to history. A legion who certainly did have them, after a fashion at least, is the one we explored in a recent log, the Sons of Horus and the Lunar Wolves. Led by First Captain Abaddon, the War Master's Honour Guard were known as the Justaerin, though in truth they were more akin to the First Company than a true Honour Guard. They would function as such, however, due to forming the spear tip in the commonly favoured tactics of Horus, and since the Primarch would likely be there too, it made sense for the Justaerin, most favoured of the wolves, to guard their liege when needed. A similar sort of description probably goes to the Thousand Sons Sekhmet, also known especially today in their rubric form as the Scarab Occult. Thought of as automatons and robots even before the rubric made them exactly that, these First Fellowship warriors commanded by Ahriman were warriors and psykers both, like much of the 15th, with the oft-derogatory comments from other Primarchs being due to their abilities to almost entirely transcend emotion. Though the Sekhmet used their powers to appear automaton-like, the Death Shroud Terminators that formed Mortarian's Guard gave a similar impression through uniformity and anonymity. The Death Shroud's members were unknown due to being listed as KIA before taking the role, selected personally by Mortarian for their skill and endurance. Armed with chem munitions and the iconic Man Reaper scythes, at least 2 Death Shroud accompanied the 14th Primarch at any time, always maintaining a maximum distance of 49 paces from their liege as silent guardians. The suzerain Invictus that guarded Robert Gilliman were a completely different prospect, however, as the officer corps of the Ultramarines were often drawn from their ranks, and so anonymity was not an option. They also weren't guardians of the 13th Primarch alone, as members of the Invictus would also serve as honour guard for the other Tetrarchs of Ultramar, fighting with Legatine axes that were once Macragian symbols of office and using both Artificer and Terminator armour when called for. Yet when we leave Macragge for New Seria, we find the starkest difference in the known honour guards. Angron had an assigned honour guard known as the Devourers, 12 elite Terminators whose membership was decided by gladiatorial challenge, and they were gifted the best of the armament in the entire 12th Legion. But much as he saw his legion as weak, Angron despised the Devourers, and essentially he had no use for them. Many World Eaters could defeat the Devourers if they so wished, and any that could realistically keep up with a force of nature like Angron would be in no way safe when the Butcher's nails bit strong and the friend-foe lines got rather blurry. And to be honest, keeping up with Angron is the hard bit. I've never had the pleasure of witnessing mortal Angron fight, but you are not going to keep up with someone like that for very long. Moving past the unknown 11th brings us to Ferrous Manus and the Morlocks of Clan Averniai. Renowned as the toughest of the Iron Hands, the Terminator-armoured Morlocks were the sole individuals permitted not to kneel when Manus entered his assembly hall known as the Anvilarium. Though the Morlocks are gone, presumably wiped out at Isfahan 5 or disbanded afterwards, their clan remains as the first company of the modern Iron Hands chapter to this day. And moving past the 10th, we reach perhaps the only honour guard within the Loyalists that remains truly unaltered throughout history, the Sanguinary Guard of the Blood Angels. Standing apart from the first company and founded and led by Azkelon, the Sanguinary Guard eschewed Terminator armour in favour of the iconic Winged Artificer armour in order to keep up with Sanguinius. The clash of personality between Azkelon and First Captain Raldoron did create a measure of friction, but the Sanguinary Guard were utterly devoted to the safety of the Angel. Azkelon would reform the Order after the Primarch died aboard the Vengeful Spirit alongside the entirety of the Sanguinary Guard save him. And whilst they are not quite honour guards in the modern era, they could certainly fill that role, carrying the chapter's banner, exemplifying Sanguinius, and standing as the elite of the former 9th Legion. Unlike the 9th, the 8th Legion's honour guard could not hold together following deaths in the leadership, in this case both Primarch Conrad Kurz and, as far as we presume, First Captain Sevatar. It was primarily the loss of Sevatar that broke the cohesion of this group, known as the Atramentar, and essentially the entire First Company. As such, their role as honour guard for Kurz is more dubious than, say, the Sanguinary Guard that were devoted to Sanguinius overall. The Atramentar's members largely broke into smaller groups much as the Night Lords did, and so while some may yet live as very, very powerful Night Lords, they will not be the elite strike force that they once were as a Legion force. Unique among the Primarchs with regards to Honour Guard was Rogel Dawn, who according to records appeared to have two separate Honour Guards. The first was the Imperial Fist's first company under Sigismund, known as the Templars, which pulled double duty as non-Terminator Guardians and the First Company, and would go on to become the modern Black Templars. The second was the Huskarls, who did use Terminator armour and were led by the last survivor of the original Inuit recruit, Arcamus. Why Dawn had two Honour Guards I do not know, but I can see certain battlefields calling for different troops to accompany the Primarch, and it is known that Arcamus and Sigismund were very different individuals, and so their councils may have both formed a useful part of the 7th Primarch's strategies. From the stoic Dawn, we move to the arguably savage Leman Russ and the Averniai that would eventually become the modern Wolfguard, and I'm going to apologise now for probably butchering the pronunciation. Formed initially from the Honour Guard of Russ on Fenris pre-Imperium, the Jarls of the Great Company as well as other key advisors would become the main constituents of the Averniai, and whilst their members save Bjorn the Fell-Handed are lost with the Primarch, their legacy lives on in the Wolf Guard for the various Wolf Lords of today. Another Honour Guard with several facets was found in the form of the White Scars Keshik, who had both Terminator and Jetbike warriors, but remained under the same overall banner of Jagatai Khan's Guardians. Many Keshik had been the warriors that fought with Khan on Chagoris, in particular First Captain and Keshik leader Kin Zar, but some were not, and there were Keshik among the traitor contingents of White Scars that guarded lower ranked Khans. Like most loyalist Honour Guards, the Keshik are gone in name and function, especially the Jetbikers of the Golden Keshik, since Astarte's Jetbikes are all but extinct, and the only one that I think is still around can be found within the Dark Angels, so wrong legion. Similarly to Dawn, Perturabo of the Iron Warriors had two Honour Guards, though not in the same way as Dawn. This one was due to the replacement of one by the other following events in the Horus Heresy. The original Honour Guard were the Terminators known as the Tyranthikos, a squad of which could be found in every Grand Battalion as well as guarding the Lord of Iron. But following the Battle of Val, the 4th Primarch decided that his sons and the Tyranthikos had failed him, presumably due to the rather successful boarding action of his flagship by the Sons of Dawn. And so Perturabo built his own Honour Guard, literally, combining various available and forbidden technologies to create the Iron Circle. These battle automata were the only non-Astartes Honour Guard in history, tireless robots telepathically linked to Perturabo and armed with powerful weapons to protect the Lord of Iron. They eventually became much more widespread amongst the Iron Warriors, though rumours persisted during the heresy that they were spies and protectors both. On the other hand, the Guardians of Fulgrim were much more constant, remaining at the side of the Phoenician through the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. Known as the Phoenix Guard, these Terminators used unique halberds akin to Custodes' Guardian spears, and were never far from the 3rd Primarch in peace or war. Wiped out against the Leyran, but reforming before Istvan, the Phoenix Guard proved superior warriors compared to the aforementioned Morlocks when Fulgrim failed to turn Ferrous Manus. The 2nd Legion are of course unknown, and so we arrive at the 1st Legion and Lionel Johnston. The Honour Guard of the 1st Legion were known as Paladins, expert swordsmen whose membership included the legendary Cor Swain, and who seemed to be spread across all the companies of the Dark Angels. Also known as the Pure Blades, the Paladins no longer exist within the modern Dark Angels, even if you might find their legacy dotted around, and the Deathwing of the Hexagrammaton have arguably taken up the closest thing to the mantle of the Honour Guard within the ranks of the Unforgiven. With the legions now out of the way, we can move forward in time and explore the modern Honour Guards of both loyal and traitor Astartes. Some, as mentioned, have remained in service whether modified or not, most notably the Sanguinary Guard and the Wolf Guard. The Atramentar still exist as well, though as smaller groups for the Scattered Night Lords leaders, rather than protecting some Grand Commander, and as I mentioned, the Scarab Occult are still there, but are now Rubricae commanded by minor sorcerers, rather than truly forming the Guard of Magnus. The Death Shroud also remain in service, though they are less attached to Mortarion following his demonic attention. In fact, those champions of the Death Guard that earn Mortarion's favour will often find a small retinue of Death Shroud attached to their warband for a particular battle, where they prove deadly assets and continue to use the now corrupted Man Reapers effectively. However, there is a caveat to this that make the Death Shroud rather less welcome than you may expect. The Terminators are not really guardians of the champion, but instead are eyes and judges for Mortarion, and should the individual be found lacking in any way, then they will be taken aside by the Death Shroud and never seen again. If they are worthy, then the still silent Death Shroud will simply leave at the end of the battle, which is a cause for relief, but also prevents any champion from appearing too favoured by maintaining a Death Shroud retinue. Whilst the gods of Mortarion remain broadly unchanged, the same can less be said about the champions of Horus, the Justaerin. Put simply, the Justaerin are gone even if some of their members survive to this day, and in their place stands the honour guard of Abaddon the Despoiler, the Bringers of Despair. Captained by the now possessed Falcus Kyber and wearing Terminator armour just as the Justaerin did in the past, one might think that the difference is negligible between the two honour guards. But there is symbolism in the change, a way of distancing the Black Legion from the stain of Horus and his ways, even if there are more than superficial similarities in methodology. The Bringers of Despair live up to their name by often serving as forerunners. Where they go, the Warmaster of Chaos will surely follow, and with his honour guard around him, doom will come soon after. Perhaps similarly to the Black Legion, the Ultramarines also changed their honour guard after the loss of their Primarch without actually changing much at all. The ranks of the Suzerain Invictus disappeared, absolutely, and the Legatine Axes seemingly were lost or retired along with it, but the honour guard for the chapter prior to Guilliman's return still wore ornate artificer armour and wielded rare and deadly power axes. These Axes of Ultramar did not have the Legatine lineage, at least to my knowledge, but somehow it wouldn't surprise me if the name was simply dropped after Guilliman's death, given how few honour guard would be needed compared to the Legion and the Suzerain Invictus. Any lost ones would just be replaced as and when, rather than swapped over to a new axe wholesale. However, when Guilliman was resurrected, things changed again, and by the time the Terran Crusade was over, a new honour guard was in place for the Avenging Sun. Rather than reform the Suzerain Invictus, exceptional warriors and commanders all and a shining example of the Ultramarines, Guilliman chose to institute something new and look to the future rather than cling to the past, a policy that, in fairness, he applies to most of the modern Imperium. Thus were born a cohort of veteran warriors known as the Victrix Guard, commanded by the Discount Aenid Thiel and pet project of Guilliman, Captain Cato Sicarius, since his return from being lost in the warp at the very least. Originally formed from purely firstborn warriors, the Victrix Guard now contains Primaris elements as well, such as the warriors that accompanied Chapter Master Marnius Calgar to Vigilus in the War of Beasts. Interestingly, however, Guilliman wants his guardians to be more than simply elite warriors, which, of course, being some of the best of the Ultramarines, they undoubtedly are. Instead, the Victrix Guard are hand-picked by the Primarch for both soldiery and statecraft, with the intent for them to serve as the Primarch's envoys, saves having Custodes do it, I suppose. Given Guilliman's eidetic memory and his own skill with statecraft even before running the entire Imperium, it perhaps makes sense that he trains his most elite sons to do the same. This way, it allows delegation to trusted Astartes commanders to use his authority and their skills in administering to the Imperium wisely. Some detractors who loathe the Astartes in Guilliman would claim it is probably a power grab and beyond the remit of the Space Marines. But if the Avenging Sun ever finishes the Codex Imperialis and amends the Codex Astartes, I would not be surprised to see the Victrix Guard and other similar trained Astartes used as governors or administrators of sorts, just sort of making Guilliman's job a bit easier. You can even sort of see this to an extent in the elevation of Commander Dante to Warden of Imperium Nihilus. They may not own the Imperium, but the Astartes may well share the rule of it one day, even in relative peacetime and when the Indomitus Crusade's actions have been lost to memory. And there you have it, insight into the honour guards of the Astartes throughout history. The mere mention of many of these groups can inspire fear, hope, or many other emotions depending on who you're speaking to. Death Shroud, Scarab Occult, Templars, Sanguinary Guard, and many more. But almost universally, honour guards have been perhaps the greatest Space Marine warriors of all time, counting untold legends amongst their number and possessing knowledge second only to Primarch or Chapter Master. For now, however, we must leave the legends behind and move on. Next time, something kind of down the other end of the scale. A look into those humans who have stepped out ever so slightly from the tight Imperial line and are thus condemned to find redemption in death on the battlefield. Thank you for watching Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.